The fluorescent lights of the ER hummed, a constant irritating buzz over the cacophony of South Philly. Beatrice Knight moved through it all with practiced grace, a whirlwind of efficiency in her scrubs. 30 years old, and already the weight of 1,000 emergencies pressed on her shoulders, each one leaving a faint mark. She was good at this, too good maybe. Her trauma shears, tucked into her scrub pocket, felt like an extension of her hand, a promise of quick, decisive action. A code red blared, slicing through the usual organized chaos. Not a patient, not a cardiac arrest. This was different. This was raw. A shout echoed from the pharmacy bay, followed by a sound that made Beatrice's blood run cold, a gunshot. One, then two. Panic, hot and sudden, erupted around her. Patients cried out, staff froze, deer in headlights. Beatrice didn't freeze. Her mind, honed by years in the crucible of trauma, snapped into hyper-focus. Everyone, down, get low. Her voice, usually calm, sliced through the rising screams. She scanned the scene, her eyes darting, assessing threats, calculating escape routes. Two figures, clumsy and masked, were wrestling with the pharmacist, shoving pill bottles into duffel bags. They weren't professionals. Their movements were jerky, almost amateurish, like bad actors in a play. It felt staged. The thought was a chilling whisper in the back of her mind, quickly drowned out by the immediate crisis. A young resident, wide-eyed and terrified, stared at a patient bleeding from a fresh wound. A stray bullet, a ricochet. Beatrice didn't hesitate. "Crash cart!" she yelled, already pushing a rolling crash cart between herself and the pharmacy entrance. It wasn't much of a shield, but it was something. "You, help me with Mr. Henderson, and you call security again." She grabbed Mr. Henderson's arm, pulling the elderly man from his gurney. "This way, everybody, follow me. Fluorescent stairwell now." Her voice was a steady anchor in the storm. She didn't look at the robbers. She couldn't afford to. Her focus was solely on the terrified faces, the vulnerable bodies, the lives entrusted to her. She pushed a young mother and her crying child ahead, her hand firm on their backs. The fluorescent stairwell beckoned, a temporary haven from the madness. Adrenaline surged, cold and sharp. Each step was a decision, each breath a silent prayer. She ushered patients, one by one, into the relative safety of the stairwell, her eyes constantly sweeping, counting heads, ensuring no one was left behind. The sounds of breaking glass and shouted commands faded slightly as they descended. From the deepest shadows of the ER, tucked away by a seldom-used service door, Niccolò Riva watched. He hadn't moved, not a muscle since the first shot rang out. His gaze, sharp and unyielding, was fixed entirely on the nurse. She moved with a ferocity he recognized, a protective instinct that transcended fear. The way she shielded patients, her calm commands, the way she made life-or-death decisions without a flicker of hesitation. It was a force of nature. He knew these robbers, pawns, clumsy, desperate pawns in a much bigger game. But the nurse, Beatrice Knight, she was no pawn. She was the queen on this board, moving with a grace and integrity he rarely saw. She was exactly what he needed. The robbers were gone, vanished into the Philadelphia night as quickly as they'd appeared, leaving behind a shattered pharmacy window, overturned shelves, and the stench of fear. The ER, usually a symphony of urgent care, was now a discordant mess. Shards of glass glittered under the harsh lights. The air still vibrated with residual panic. Beatrice moved through the aftermath on autopilot, her hands steady as she helped secure the area, her mind buzzing with a furious energy. Police sirens wailed closer now, their red and blue lights painting the room in frantic flashes. She gave her statement, precise and detailed, her voice even. She described the clumsy movements, the almost theatrical nature of the robbers, the way they seemed to stumble over their own feet. She didn't voice her suspicion that it felt staged. But she highlighted the inconsistencies, the amateurish execution that bothered her. The officers, weary and accustomed to the city's grim dance, nodded, scribbling notes. They saw a robbery. Beatrice saw something else, something rotten, a symptom of a deeper sickness. This wasn't just random violence. It felt like a forced hand, a clumsy attempt at disruption. Her stomach twisted with a familiar frustration, the same churning she'd felt years ago when she'd tried to blow the whistle on a small, local corruption, only to be met with blank stares and a quiet threat to her license. She'd learned then that some battles couldn't be fought in the light, but it didn't mean she'd stopped seeing the shadows. Hours later, the adrenaline had drained, leaving her hollowed out, exhausted to the bone. Her shift finally ended. She peeled off her scrubs, the fabric clinging to her damp skin, and pulled on her street clothes. The hospital felt heavy, oppressive, the air still thick with unspoken anxieties. She walked out into the cool night, seeking the familiar solace of the streetlights. A shadow detached itself from the wall beside the staff exit. Beatrice stopped dead, her hand instinctively going to her scrub pocket, though her trauma shears were long put away. Niccolò Riva. He materialized out of the gloom, his presence commanding yet somehow understated. He wasn't overtly threatening, but every instinct screamed danger. He simply watched her, his dark eyes intense, assessing. "Beatrice Knight," he said, his voice a low rumble, surprisingly smooth. Not a question, but a statement of fact. He knew her name. He knew who she was. The knowledge sent a shiver down her spine that had nothing to do with the cold. "And you are?" she asked, her voice steady despite the sudden spike in her pulse. Her gaze didn't waver. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. "Someone who sees more than just a simple robbery, Nurse Knight. Someone who understands the real game being played here." He stepped closer, not invading her space, but making his presence impossible to ignore. "That little spectacle tonight, that was a pawn in a political racket, a clumsy attempt to push a larger agenda. Your hospital is a target." Her breath hitched. He was saying aloud what she'd only dared to whisper in her own mind. It was unsettling, confirming her worst fears, but also validating her instincts. "I know about your past, Beatrice," he continued, his eyes holding hers. "Your attempts to make things right, only to be shut down by the very system you tried to protect. You're too good, too principled to stand by and watch this rot." Beatrice clenched her jaw. He knew everything. "I can offer you protection," Niccolò said, his voice dropping to a near whisper, "and a real chance to make this hospital safer, to expose the people truly behind this, beyond the limits of official channels, beyond the reach of those who benefit from the chaos." He extended a hand, not to touch her, but as an open gesture. "Come with me." It wasn't a demand, not a threat, but an invitation, heavy with unspoken power and a shared, dangerous purpose. Her mind reeled. Niccolò Riva was a name whispered in hushed tones in South Philly, a man whose shadow stretched long and deep. His world was dangerous, murky. Everything her principled life stood against. But his words, the truth in them, resonated with a painful clarity. He was offering safety, but at what cost? Her freedom, her integrity. The tension between his offer and her own rigid code was a tangible thing, pulling her in two directions. She distrusted him deeply, yet a part of her, the part that hated injustice, recognized the truth in his gaze. She was standing at a precipice, and he was offering a hand into the abyss. Beatrice felt it the next day, a cold prickle on her skin, a sense of being watched even in the bustling ER. Her medication logs, usually meticulously organized, were found slightly out of place, a file corner bent. Nothing major, but enough to make her stomach clench. Then came the warning from a senior nurse, a woman who usually kept to herself. "Keep your head down, Knight," she'd whispered, her eyes wide with a fear Beatrice recognized. "Some things are bigger than us." Hospital security, when she reported the misplaced file, just shrugged. "Probably just a busy day, nurse." Their indifference was almost more alarming than the incidents themselves. "A target," Niccolo had said. She felt it, sharp and undeniable. He reappeared 2 days later, not in the shadows of the hospital, but outside her usual coffee shop, leaning against a sleek, dark car. Casual, almost too casual. She saw him before he saw her, and a jolt went through her, a mix of apprehension and a strange, undeniable curiosity. He opened the seat. Passenger door with a silent gesture. No words needed. This was the invitation. She hesitated, her mind screaming no, but her feet were already moving. The car smelled faintly of leather and something clean, expensive. He drove through the familiar, grittier streets of South Philly, eventually pulling up to a beautifully restored brick row house, indistinguishable from its neighbors. Inside, it was warm, rich with dark wood, and an unexpected library of books. Comfortable, yes, but the quiet hum of power was palpable. "Councilman Hayes," Niccolo began, pouring her a glass of water, his movements fluid and precise. "He wants to privatize this hospital, not for efficiency, but for profit, for his pockets and the pockets of his cronies." He leaned forward, his gaze locking onto hers. "Those robberies staged, designed to create chaos, fear, to make people desperate enough to accept any solution, even one that sells off their health care to the highest bidder." Beatrice felt a cold rage build inside her. It was worse than she'd imagined. "My code," he continued, his voice a low, steady current, "is simple. Shield innocence, never force loyalty, outthink before outmuscle." He gestured around the room. "I have resources, Beatrice, influence, information. You have something even more valuable, integrity. You see the truth, and you're brave enough to act on it." He paused, letting his words sink in. "I propose an alliance. Your knowledge, your meticulous records, your unwavering and principles, my network, my ability to move in the shadows, to find the weak points no one else sees. Together we can shut Hayes down, for good." Beatrice stared at him, her heart thumping against her ribs. An alliance with a Mafia boss. The absurdity of it would be laughable if it weren't so terrifyingly real. "An alliance," she scoffed, her voice sharper than she intended. "Your network operates outside the law, Mr. Reaver. My entire career, my license, everything I've worked for, depends on upholding it. I don't compromise my principles. Not for you, not for anyone." She gripped the worn union flyer in her pocket, its crisp edges a comfort. For fair wages, for patient safety, for transparency. Everything he represented felt like the antithesis of that. "And what about when the law is broken from within?" he challenged, his eyes narrowing, not in anger, but in a keen assessment. "When the very system meant to protect fails. You saw it yourself, Nurse Knight. The police, security. They're blind, or worse, complicit. Hayes has allies in places you wouldn't believe." His words hit home, a painful echo of her past. She hated his methods, the dark implications of his world, but she couldn't deny the truth in his statement. A powerful current, raw and unspoken, pulsed between them. It was more than just the danger. It was the intense meeting of two sharp minds, two wills, both fiercely dedicated to their own version of justice. She hated him for making her see it, for making her feel this unsettling pull. "I won't be a pawn in your game, Mr. Reaver," she insisted, pushing back from the table, but her gaze remained locked with his, unable to pull away. "If I do this, it's on my terms, in the light, with documentation. Her voice trembled slightly, betraying the turmoil within. He simply watched her, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips, as if he expected nothing less. The air crackled between them, thick with defiance, suspicion, and a dangerous, undeniable spark. Beatrice walked out of Niccolo Riva's row house, the cool Philly air a stark contrast to the charged atmosphere inside. His words echoed in her mind: shield innocence, never force loyalty, outthink before outmuscle. He had spoken with a quiet authority that both repelled and fascinated her. Her principles screamed at her to run, to bury herself in her work and forget the dangerous man. But the chilling truth of his words about Councilman Hayes, about the staged robberies, gnawed at her. She couldn't unhear it. The very next morning, a subtle shift occurred at the hospital. The misplaced file, the one she'd reported with no follow-up, was suddenly back in its perfect place. The senior nurse who'd warned her against bigger things pulled her aside, looking relieved. "Security's been, reorganized a little," she mumbled, avoiding eye contact. "Suddenly they're actually looking into things." Beatrice felt a jolt. Niccolo. He hadn't said a word, hadn't threatened anyone, but he had. Clearly moved. He had demonstrated his reach, subtly, without breaking her trust. It was unsettling, effective, and entirely outside her moral framework. She hated it, but she couldn't deny the quiet efficiency. She found him 2 days later, not waiting for her, but simply there on a bench in Rittenhouse Square, watching the city go by. He looked like any other man, yet a primal part of her recognized the predator beneath the polished exterior. Beatrice approached him, her heart thrumming. "We need to talk," she stated, her voice firm. He merely looked at her, his dark eyes unwavering, and gestured to the empty space beside him. She sat, keeping a careful distance. "If I consider this alliance," she began, choosing her words carefully, "there are conditions, non-negotiables." Niccolo steepled his fingers, his gaze intense. "Go on." "My license," she said, tapping her chest, "is everything. I will not engage in anything illegal. No violence, no threats. I need transparency. Documentation. I need to be able to stand by everything I do, every piece of evidence I present in the light." She felt a familiar knot of fear tighten in her stomach, bringing back the sting of her past failure. "I tried to blow the whistle once," she admitted, the words spilling out raw and vulnerable. "Small-time corruption, nothing like this. But they buried me, made it clear my career was on the line if I pushed. I learned then that some truths need more than just good intentions. They need irrefutable proof and a public platform." Her voice hardened. "I will not lose my ability to help people because I compromise my integrity, Mr. Riva. Not again." He listened, his expression unreadable, but she felt the weight of his attention. "Daylight and documentation," he repeated, a low murmur. "I understand. Your integrity, Beatrice, is not a weakness I wish to exploit. It's the very strength I need." He looked out at the bustling park. "Hayes operates in the shadows. He counts on fear, on silence. We have a shared purpose to expose him, to protect this community. Our methods may differ, but our goal is the same." He turned back to her, a faint, almost approving smile on his lips. "And your documentation, Nurse Knight, your meticulous records, they are far more powerful than any bullet. You've been keeping track of every pill, every supply, every incident report. You see patterns others miss, don't you?" Her eyes widened. He had seen it. He understood. Her medication. Logs, her careful notes on lost items, the odd discrepancies she'd observed. He knew they were more than just paperwork. They were evidence. A glimmer of hope, dangerous and exhilarating, sparked within her. Niccolo reached into a small bag beside him on the bench. He pulled out a seemingly innocuous object, a small dark blue pill tote, the kind nurses used for quick rounds. It looked utterly harmless. He placed it in her hands. "This is yours now," he said, his voice soft, almost intimate. "Inside there's a tracker, a very small, very discreet one." He met her gaze, his eyes serious. "It's for information gathering, Beatrice, not for violence. It will tell us where certain people are, who they're meeting. It will help us connect the dots, verify your patterns." He paused, letting her feel the weight of the little bag in her hands. "This is our first step, a tangible step towards exposing Hayes, your way, in the light, with documentation." Beatrice stared at the pill tote, then at him, a tracker. It felt invasive, a step into his world, a world she deeply mistrusted. But he hadn't forced it. He had offered it, explained its purpose, and linked it directly to her own goal of transparency. It was a dangerous game, but for the first time, she felt a sliver of control, a fragile, unsettling trust forming between them. The pill tote, so ordinary on the surface, felt like a silent, dangerous promise. She clutched it, a new kind of alliance beginning. The pill tote felt heavy in Beatrice's hand, a small, innocent-looking object carrying the weight of a monumental decision. She had left Niccolo at the park, the tracker in the bag a silent hum against her skin. She spent the next day dissecting his offer, turning it over and over in her mind. His words, shield innocence, never force loyalty, outthink before outmuscle, echoed with a dangerous appeal. He didn't demand, he offered. He wanted her sharp mind, her unwavering ethical framework. He needed her to see the truth, to act on it, and she needed him to fight a battle she couldn't win alone, not without losing herself in the process. She found him again, not by chance this time, but by intention. A discreet message passed through a contact she was still trying to rationalize accepting. They met in a quiet, out-of-the-way diner, the clatter of dishes a mundane backdrop to their extraordinary conversation. "I'll do it," Beatrice said, her voice steady, cutting straight to the point. She watched his expression, looking for any flicker of triumph, any hint of manipulation. There was none, only a calm, assessing gaze. "Good," Niccolo replied, a faint, almost imperceptible nod. "My resources are yours. My people will watch. My information network will be at your disposal. We will outthink Hayes. On my terms," she immediately countered, her spine straightening. She wouldn't be swept into his world without her own anchors. "Absolutely no illegal activity on my part. I will not break the law, ever, no. Violence, no threats, no coercion that could jeopardize my license or my conscience. This has to be transparent. Every piece of evidence, every action must be something I can stand by publicly. In the daylight." He held her gaze, unwavering. "I agreed to daylight and documentation, Beatrice. Your integrity is our strongest weapon. I won't dull it." "My career comes first," she pressed, needing him to understand the absolute priority. "My ability to be a nurse, to help people, is non-negotiable. If anything at any point threatens that, I walk away. No questions, no arguments." She was testing him, pushing his stated code. Never force loyalty. Did he mean it? A slow smile, subtle and dangerous, touched his lips. "I wouldn't have it any other way, Nurse Knight. I'm not interested in forcing anything. I'm interested in results. And your way, with your meticulousness, your unwavering belief in doing what's right, that's the path to results Hayes won't see coming." The air between them crackled, charged with unspoken tension. It was a negotiation of wills, a forging of an unlikely alliance. She was pushing, he was giving, but always with that underlying current of power that was undeniably his. Yet he respected her. He saw her strength, not just her vulnerability, the raw, unspoken attraction, born from shared intensity and a grudging respect, tightened its grip on her. It was unsettling, the way her body reacted to his presence, the way her mind hummed with his. Every word. This wasn't just about justice anymore, it was about them. "So," Beatrice said, deliberately breaking eye contact, focusing on the chipped formica table. "Where do we start?" Niccolo leaned forward, his voice dropping, drawing her into a conspiratorial intimacy. "You start where you always do, Nurse Knight, with the details. Go through those medication logs, incident reports. Look for the patterns, the losses, the malfunctions. Correlate them with the dates of Hayes's public statements, the times of the staged robberies, everything. You're looking for the internal rot, the complicity within the hospital itself." He tapped the pill tote, still in her bag under the table. "And I'll be watching the tracker, waiting for the councilman's next move and the movements of his closest associates. We'll verify your data with real-time intel. Piece by piece, we'll build a case that even Hayes can't ignore." Beatrice felt a surge of purpose, cold and sharp. This was her battleground, her expertise, her documents, her observations, her unwavering eye for detail. This was her way. She nodded, a silent agreement. The dangerous game had officially begun. Councilman Hayes's face filled the break-room television screen, his smile too wide, too smooth. Beatrice watched him during her precious 15-minute break, a cold knot forming in her stomach. He was at a press conference, gesturing emphatically, his voice booming about the unacceptable levels of urban decay and the failures of public institutions. He pointed directly to the recent pharmacy heist, twisting the narrative into proof that the hospital needed private management, needed his strong hand to restore order. He painted the robbers as symbols of chaos, ignoring the clumsiness Beatrice had witnessed, the amateurish execution that screamed "set up." He was building his case, brick by brick, on a foundation of lies. That same afternoon, the hospital generator flickered, plunging a section of the surgical wing into a momentary eerie darkness. It was brief, only seconds before the auxiliary power kicked in, but it was enough to cause a scramble, a flurry of panicked calls. "Another incident," the security chief called it, shrugging it off as an electrical malfunction. Beatrice wasn't fooled. She checked her log, the one she now meticulously updated after every shift. Generator flicker, surgical wing, 2:17 p.m. She remembered the last two malfunctions. They always seemed to happen just before Hayes made a public statement about infrastructure failures, always adding fuel to his privatization fire. The inconsistencies, once subtle, were now glaring. Her stomach twisted with a familiar fury. This wasn't decay, it was sabotage. She spent her evenings hunched over her laptop, the old Union flyer pinned to her bulletin board, a stark reminder of what they were fighting for. Her medication logs, usually a dry record of inventory, became a treasure map of deceit. She cross-referenced every missing vial, every damaged syringe, every lost patient chart with the dates of these incidents and Hayes's public appearances. The patterns emerged, stark and damning. Specific high-value drugs, always the same type, consistently went missing during these staged disruptions. Certain security cameras always seemed to be under maintenance during the precise windows of the robberies. It was all there, laid out in black and white, undeniable proof of a coordinated attack. Then came the email, an anonymous sender, the subject line a single chilling word, careful. The body contained no text, only an image, a grainy, zoomed-in photo of Beatrice herself, walking out of the hospital after her shift, her head down, looking tired. The picture was taken from a distance, but the message was clear. Someone was watching her. Someone knew about her over-diligence, knew she was digging too deep. Her breath hitched. The target Niccolo had warned her about had materialized, stark and terrifying. She wasn't just observing the rot anymore, she was directly in its crosshairs. A shiver ran down her spine, cold and sharp. She immediately thought of Niccolo. She didn't want to rely on him, didn't want to get further entangled in his dangerous world, but the fear was a visceral thing, impossible to ignore. Her fingers trembled as she typed a brief message, her first direct communication to him since their diner meeting. "They know I'm looking." His response was immediate, a single, terse word, "Acknowledged." Within hours, she felt the subtle shift in the air. A different car parked across the street from her apartment building, its windows tinted, always there when she left, always there when she returned. She saw a new face in the hospital cafeteria, a man who seemed too observant, too quiet for a casual visitor. Niccolo hadn't asked, hadn't consulted. He had simply acted. His protective net had tightened, an invisible shield around her. He recognized the councilman's growing desperation. He knew, just as she did, that the danger was no longer a distant threat, but a cold, hard reality pressing in on all sides. She was a target, and Niccolo Riva was making sure she wouldn't fall. The anonymous email, the grainy photo of her, had ripped through Beatrice's composure. The hospital, once her sanctuary, now felt like a cage where she was being watched. Her movements became guarded, her eyes constantly scanning. She couldn't shake the feeling of an unseen presence, a cold breath on her neck. It was clear she couldn't continue her investigation from within the hospital's walls, not safely. Niccolo's message had been terse. "Your apartment is no longer secure. My driver will pick you up at 700. Pack a bag, minimal essentials. I have a place for you." Her stomach churned. A place for her. It sounded like a demand, a forced retreat. Every fiber of her being resisted. This was exactly the kind of control she fought against. But the image of her own face, captured in secret, flashed in her mind. Her principles were strong, but they wouldn't save her from a bullet. She packed, her hands shaking slightly. The place was a small, nondescript apartment above a bakery in an older, quiet part of South Philly. It was clean, sparsely furnished, and felt utterly anonymous. No one would look for her here. The windows were new, thick glass, and the door felt solid. It was safe and utterly isolating. She resented the loss of her independence, the feeling of being hidden away, but she couldn't deny the relief that washed over her. Here she could breathe, here she could focus. Despite the unsettling change, Beatrice plunged into her work with renewed fervor. Her laptop became her world. She spread out her printouts, her handwritten notes, the union flyer always within sight, a touchstone. She opened her medication logs, a year's worth of data, and began cross-referencing with a vengeance. Hospital security reports, incident timelines, staff. Rosters, maintenance schedules for everything from MRI machines to the hospital generator panel. She devoured it all. The patterns screamed at her. Not just the missing high-value drugs, always the same batches, always during the incidents. Not just the security cameras malfunctioning in crucial areas, but the timing, every anomaly, every loss, every accidental power dip, coincided almost perfectly with Councilman Hayes's public statements, with his carefully orchestrated media. Appearances railing against the hospital's decay. It was a meticulously crafted narrative, designed to create public outrage and push through his privatization agenda. The rage burned cold and steady within her. Niccolo appeared late one evening, letting himself in with a key, a silent shadow in the dim light. He carried a takeout container, the aroma of Italian spices filling the small apartment. He didn't ask about her comfort, didn't apologize for her confinement. He simply set the food down and pulled out his own tablet. "Hayes just had a private meeting at the old Naval Yard pier," he stated, his voice low, "with a man named Costello, a known associate with deep pockets in the construction industry. The same industry that stands to make a fortune if your hospital goes private." He tapped the screen, showing a blurry thermal image. The tracker in the pill tote worked perfectly. Costello's car marked, Hayes's car right beside it. Beatrice's eyes widened. "Costello?" she whispered. "He's on the hospital's board of directors. He's been pushing for this privatization deal for months." The pieces were fitting together, sickeningly neat. Her documentation, his intelligence, a dangerous synergy. "They're getting desperate," Niccolo observed, watching her. "You're getting close, Beatrice, and the closer you get, the more dangerous it becomes." She pushed away her plate, the food suddenly tasteless. "I know," she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. The fear was a constant companion now, a heavy cloak. "I tried this once before, a small clinic, a corrupt administrator. I had all the proof, but they shut me down, threatened my license, made it clear I'd never work again if I pushed." She looked at him, her gaze raw. "I can't lose my license, Niccolo. It's all I have. It's how I help people. It's who I am." Her voice cracked with the old pain, the lingering humiliation of being silenced. Niccolo's expression softened, a subtle shift that revealed a depth she hadn't expected. He didn't offer empty platitudes. He simply reached across the table, his hand covering hers for a brief, reassuring moment. The warmth of his touch was startling. "I understand that, Beatrice," he said, his voice a low rumble. "More than you know." He paused, his eyes distant, as if looking into his own past. "My family has a code. Protect our own. Protect the community. My father, his father. They built this neighborhood. They saw the corruption, the injustice when no one else would. They learned to fight it, sometimes in ways that weren't pretty, but it was always for the people who had no one else, for the innocents." He looked back at her, his gaze intense. "You are fighting for the innocents, Beatrice, and I won't let them silence you again." His words, simple and direct, resonated with a profound honesty. He wasn't just a fixer, a man of shadows. He was a protector, driven by his own fierce, if morally ambiguous code. In that quiet, shared vulnerability, a deeper layer of trust began to cement between them, a fragile, dangerous thing forged in the crucible of their shared purpose. He knew her fear, and he recognized his own reflection in her unwavering resolve. The anonymous apartment felt like a tomb sometimes, quiet and airless, but it was also her war room. Beatrice was surrounded by stacks of paper, medication logs, shift schedules, incident reports, maintenance records for every piece of equipment, including the hospital generator panel. The crumpled Union flyer, a relic from a time when she believed in the system, lay under her hand. She had pored over these documents for days, weeks, until her eyes burned and the numbers blurred. She was looking for patterns, for the threads connecting Hayes's public corruption to the hospital's internal decay. Then she saw it. It wasn't a single smoking gun, but a constellation of tiny, damning details. The malfunctioning security cameras during the robberies, their maintenance logs, consistently showed a routine inspection scheduled after the incident, signed off by the head of security. The power dips, always conveniently timed to coincide with Hayes's speeches. The generator panel logs showed manual overrides, brief but deliberate, executed by someone with high-level access, and the missing high-value medications. They weren't just lost. A pattern of approved write-offs for these specific drugs consistently bore the same signature. Robert Sterling, head of hospital. Security. Beatrice felt a sickening lurch in her gut. Sterling, the man who was supposed to protect them, the man she'd given her precise, detailed statements to after the first robbery. He had looked so concerned, so professional. Now, she saw the lie in his eyes. He wasn't just ineffective, he was complicit. He was the internal rot, the wolf in sheep's clothing, systematically bypassing protocols, creating chaos from within. It was a betrayal so profound, it made her tremble with cold fury. She gathered her evidence, her hands shaking slightly as she stapled together the damning pages. The medication logs, the security reports, the generator panel printouts. It was all there, undeniable. She didn't want to believe it, but the proof was irrefutable. Niccolo arrived silently, as always. He found her staring at the wall, the stacks of paper around her like fortifications. He took in her pale face, the taut line of her jaw, and knew. "I found him," Beatrice said, her voice tight with suppressed rage. She pushed the thick folder across the table. "Robert Sterling, the head of security. He's on Hayes's payroll. He's been orchestrating the internal side of this entire scheme." Niccolo picked up the folder, his expression grim. He flipped through the pages, his eyes scanning the details with astonishing speed. The manual override codes, the signed write-offs, the malfunctioning camera reports. He didn't seem surprised, only intensely focused. He pulled out his tablet, tapping. "Quickly. We've been tracking Sterling for the past week, based on your initial suspicions about the internal leaks. The tracker in the pill tote on Hayes's associate, Costello, confirmed direct communication with a burner phone. That burner phone, Beatrice, has been in constant contact with Sterling's personal device." He paused, his gaze meeting hers, hard and unwavering. "Financial transfers. Small, untraceable sums, but consistent. From a shell company linked to Costello, straight to Sterling's offshore account." Beatrice felt a cold certainty settle over her. "So it's confirmed." The sheer scale of the betrayal, the audacity of it, left her breathless. Niccolo closed the folder, his jaw tight. Hayes's plan was always to use internal weakness to justify privatization. But he needed someone on the inside to create that weakness. Sterling was his man. The staged robberies, the generator malfunctions, the missing drugs, it was all designed to paint the hospital as a failing institution ripe for a corporate takeover. He stood, walking to the small window, his back to her. "We can't just expose Hayes now. That won't be enough. We need to expose Sterling. We need to show the city that the very man sworn to protect them was the one tearing the hospital apart from the inside. That kind of betrayal, it resonates." Beatrice watched him, a new kind of resolve solidifying within her. It wasn't just about saving the hospital anymore. It was about exposing the rot, root, and branch. "How?" she asked, her voice steady now. "How do we do that without getting buried ourselves?" Niccolo turned, his eyes piercing. "Your documentation, Beatrice. That's our weapon. Irrefutable, undeniable. It's time to bring this into the light. All of it." He started to pace, his mind already spinning, formulating a plan that would publicly expose the corruption, using her meticulous records as the linchpin. The game had just become infinitely more dangerous and infinitely more personal. The anonymous apartment felt like a tomb sometimes, quiet and airless, but it was also her war room. Beatrice was surrounded by stacks of paper, medication logs, shift schedules, incident reports, maintenance records for every piece of equipment, including the hospital generator panel. The crumpled union flyer, a relic from a time when she believed in the system, lay under her hand. She had pored over these documents for days, weeks, until her eyes burned and the numbers blurred. She was looking for patterns, for the threads connecting Hayes's public corruption to the hospital's internal decay. Then she saw it. It wasn't a single smoking gun, but a constellation of tiny, damning details. The malfunctioning security cameras during the robberies, their maintenance logs consistently showed a routine inspection scheduled after the incident, signed off by the head of security. The power dips, always conveniently timed to coincide with Hayes's speeches, the generator panel logs, showed manual overrides, brief but deliberate, executed by someone with high-level access, and the missing high-value medications. They weren't just lost. A pattern of approved write-offs for these specific drugs consistently bore the same signature: Robert Sterling, head of hospital security. Beatrice felt a sickening lurch in her gut. Sterling, the man who was supposed to protect them, the man she'd given her precise, detailed statements to after the first robbery. He had looked so concerned, so professional. Now she saw the lie in his eyes. He wasn't just ineffective, he was complicit. He was the internal rot, the wolf in sheep's clothing, systematically bypassing protocols, creating chaos from within. It was a betrayal so profound it made her tremble with cold fury. She gathered her evidence, her hands shaking slightly as she stapled together the damning pages. The medication logs, the security reports, the generator panel printouts. It was all there, undeniable. She didn't want to believe it, but the proof was irrefutable. Niccolo arrived silently, as always. He found her staring at the wall, the stacks of paper around her like fortifications. He took in her pale face, the taut line of her jaw, and knew. "I found him," Beatrice said, her voice tight with suppressed rage. She pushed the thick folder across the table. "Robert Sterling, the head of security. He's on Hayes's payroll. He's been orchestrating the internal side of this entire scheme." Niccolo picked up the folder, his expression grim. He flipped through the pages, his eyes scanning the details with astonishing speed. The manual override codes, the signed write-offs, the malfunctioning camera reports. He didn't seem surprised, only intensely focused. He pulled out his tablet, tapping quickly. "We've been tracking Sterling for the past week, based on your initial suspicions about the internal leaks. The tracker in the pill tote on Hayes's associate Costello confirmed direct communication with a burner phone. That burner phone, Beatrice, has been in constant contact with Sterling's personal device." He paused, his gaze meeting hers, hard and unwavering. "Financial transfers, small, untraceable sums, but consistent. From a shell company linked to Costello, straight to Sterling's offshore account." Beatrice felt a cold certainty settle over her. "So it's confirmed." The sheer scale of the betrayal, the audacity of it, left her breathless. Niccolo closed the folder, his jaw tight. Hayes's plan was always to use internal weakness to justify privatization, but he needed someone on the inside to create that weakness. Sterling was his man. The staged robberies, the generator malfunctions, the missing drugs. It was all designed to paint the hospital as a failing institution, ripe for a corporate takeover. He stood, walking to the small window, his back to her. "We can't just expose Hayes now. That won't be enough. We need to expose Sterling. We need to show the city that the very man sworn to protect them was the one tearing the hospital apart from the inside. That kind of betrayal, it resonates." Beatrice watched him, a new kind of resolve solidifying within her. It wasn't just about saving the hospital anymore. It was about exposing the rot, root and branch. "How?" she asked, her voice steady now. "How do we do that without getting buried ourselves?" Niccolo turned, his eyes piercing. "Your documentation, Beatrice. That's our weapon. Irrefutable. Undeniable. It's time to bring this into the light. All of it. He started to pace, his mind already spinning, formulating a plan that would publicly expose the corruption, using her meticulous records as the linchpin. The game had just become infinitely more dangerous and infinitely more personal. The revelation of Robert Sterling's betrayal had ignited a cold fire in Beatrice. It wasn't just anger, it was a profound sense of violation, a personal insult to her oath. She pushed past the rage, channeling it into meticulous action. Every piece of paper, every highlighted discrepancy, every damning signature was now a weapon. She refined her dossier, cross-referencing dates and times, building an undeniable narrative of corruption. She knew she had to present it herself. This wasn't just about the evidence, it was about her standing up, unbowed. Niccolo watched her, his expression a mixture of grim satisfaction and deep concern. "The evidence is solid, Beatrice," he said, his voice low. "But the exposure needs to be strategic. Hayes won't go down quietly. Sterling will be even more desperate." He paused, his gaze softening almost imperceptibly. "I can arrange for the evidence to be leaked anonymously. It would still bring them down, keep you out of the line of fire." Beatrice's head snapped up. "No!" The word was sharp, unwavering. "Absolutely not. This is my fight. I compiled this. I lived through those robberies. I watched Sterling pretend to be a protector while he was tearing the hospital apart from the inside. I will be the one to expose him in the light, with my name attached." Her jaw was tight, her eyes blazing with an intensity that dared him to argue. She was not a damsel to be protected, not a fragile flower to be shielded. She was a force. Niccolo held her gaze, a silent battle of wills playing out between them. He saw the fire in her, the absolute refusal to be sidelined. His own code, never force loyalty, echoed in his mind. He had promised to respect her terms, her integrity. To deny her, this would be to undermine everything she stood for, everything he admired in her. A slow, almost tender smile touched his lips. "As you wish, Nurse Knight." His acceptance was a silent acknowledgement of her strength, a deepening of the dangerous, unspoken trust between them. He moved quickly then, his efficiency stark against her methodical precision. He made a discreet call, speaking in hushed tones, arranging a meeting with an investigative reporter, a woman named Sarah, known for her tenacity and integrity. He assured Beatrice that Sarah was trustworthy, someone who understood the stakes and wouldn't sensationalize the truth. Beatrice, in turn, began to map out the hospital. Her years of working every shift, every unit, gave her an intimate knowledge of its arteries and veins. "The security chief's office," she mused, tracing a finger on a blueprint. "It's too controlled. He'd have an advantage. The main lobby is too chaotic. We need a place where the evidence can be presented clearly, but also where the chaos he wants to create can be used against him." Her finger landed on a section near the main hospital generator panel. "Here. It's accessible, but also somewhat isolated. And if there's a malfunction, the generator provides a visual cue, a symbol of everything that's been corrupted." Niccolo nodded, his mind already calculating angles, security perimeters. "The tracker in the pill tote," he reminded her. "It needs to be active, transmitting live. Sarah will set up a covert live stream. We want the audio of Sterling's confession, or even his denials, captured and broadcast. Irrefutable." They discussed contingencies, escape routes, secondary contacts, what to do if things went sideways. Beatrice insisted that Niccolo's crew remain off-camera, an invisible shield. "This needs to be clean, Niccolo," she emphasized. "No whispers of outside interference. Just the truth, brought to light by me." He agreed. Without hesitation, recognizing the critical importance of her narrative. He brought her a new pill tote, identical to the first, but with a new, more powerful tracker, tested and ready for live transmission. As he handed it to her, his fingers brushed hers, a spark of electricity arcing between them. Her breath hitched. The tension, the danger, the terrifying intimacy of their shared purpose was a potent cocktail. He was her dangerous protector, and she, his unwavering conscience. The hospital. Generator panel, a cold metal box, became their unlikely stage. The trap was set. Councilman Hayes was everywhere. His face, slick and confident, plastered across every local news channel, dominating headlines. He was publicly ramping up his campaign, his voice dripping with false concern as he decried the hospital's spiraling crisis and the failures of public oversight. He hinted darkly at a final, decisive incident that would prove, once and for all, the urgent need for privatization. Beatrice watched him, her jaw tight, recognizing the frantic desperation beneath his smooth exterior. He knew they were closing in. He was trying to force their hand, to create one last grand distraction. Her mind raced, connecting the dots. The incidents always followed a pattern, escalating in severity, designed to coincide with critical votes or public announcements. She knew what this final push meant. It meant Sterling, his inside man, would make his move soon. And she had to be there. "I'm taking the night shift," Beatrice announced to her supervisor, her voice calm, even. "The trauma bay. I want to be there." Her supervisor, a tired woman too accustomed to the hospital's perpetual understaffing, just nodded. It wasn't a request. It was a quiet declaration. This wasn't just about her job anymore. It was about confronting the rot directly, putting herself in the path of the storm. She knew the layout of the hospital's critical care units better than anyone. She knew where the vulnerable patients would be, where the chaos would be most effective, and where her carefully compiled evidence would have the most impact. She was walking into the lion's den, but she wouldn't be a victim. She would be the one springing the trap. A new message blinked on her burner phone, a single text from Niccolo. "Sarah is ready. Her team is embedded. My crew will be perimeter only, off camera as you demanded. No interference, just protection." His words were concise, a silent promise of his. Presence and support, yet always respecting her boundaries. She appreciated that. He understood that this had to be her fight, her victory, for it to truly mean something. His restraint was a different kind of strength, a testament to the strange, powerful trust that had formed between them. The night arrived, heavy and oppressive. The hospital hummed with its usual low thrum of machinery, the distant cries of patients, the quiet urgency of a city that never slept. Beatrice felt a surge of both, cold fear and resolute determination. She double-checked her bag, making sure the new pill tote, the one with the live transmitting tracker, was secured within. This wasn't just a medical bag, it was a conduit to justice. She sat alone in the break room for a moment, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, pulling out her dossier one last time. Every page was a testament to Sterling's betrayal, to Hayes's greed, her meticulous medication logs, the security camera outages, the manual overrides, on the hospital generator panel, all of it laid bare. The weight of it pressed on her, a profound responsibility. This wasn't just a job, it was a reckoning. Her trauma shears, tucked into her scrub pocket, felt cool against her skin, a symbol of her purpose. She took a deep, steadying breath, letting the fear wash over her, then pushing it away. She was ready. She would stand for her patients, for her principles. She would step into the fire. Another message from Niccolo, just as she was about to leave the break room, a final anchoring thought. "Daylight and documentation, Beatrice. remember your purpose. A quiet reminder, a shared objective. It wasn't a warning, but a reaffirmation. He trusted her to see this through, her way, and for the first time in years, she felt utterly, terrifyingly ready. The night arrived, heavy and oppressive, a blanket muffling the usual roar of South Philly. Inside the hospital, the hum of machinery was a constant, almost sentient drone, punctuated by the distant cries of patients, a quiet symphony of urgency. Beatrice felt a surge of cold fear, sharp and undeniable, mingling with a resolute determination that hardened her spine. This was it. She double-checked her bag, her fingers tracing the outline of the pill tote, the one with the live transmitting tracker nestled deep inside. It was ready. She was ready. Her burner phone vibrated, a single text from Niccolo. "Sarah is ready. Her team is embedded. My crew will be perimeter only. Off camera. As you demanded, no interference, just protection." His words were concise, a silent promise of his presence, his unseen support. She appreciated that. He understood this had to be her fight, her victory, for it to truly mean something. His restraint was a different kind of strength, a testament to the strange, powerful trust that had formed between them. Across the city, tucked into a surveillance van disguised as a utility vehicle, Sarah, the investigative reporter, adjusted her earpiece. Her team, a silent, efficient unit, finalized their equipment. Cables snaked, screens flickered with a faint blue light, and tiny, powerful cameras were positioned, aimed at the hospital's entrance, its back alleys, and a specific, unassuming window on an upper floor. They were ready to go live at a moment's notice, a clandestine broadcast waiting for its cue. Meanwhile, Robert Sterling, head of hospital security, moved through the deserted corridors. He was oblivious, a man operating under the delusion of control. He made a final check of the hospital generator panel, his hand resting on the cool metal, a satisfied smirk playing on his lips. His timing was impeccable. Everything was in place. The final incident would unfold perfectly, securing Councilman Hayes's privatization deal. He believed he was tying up loose ends, securing his future, unaware that he was merely tightening the noose around his own neck. Beatrice slipped into the break room for a moment, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, pulling out her dossier one last time. Every page was a testament to Sterling's betrayal, to Hayes's greed, her meticulous medication logs, the security camera outages, the manual overrides on the hospital generator panel, all of it laid bare. The weight of it pressed on her, a profound responsibility. This wasn't just a job, it was a reckoning. Her trauma shears, tucked into her scrub pocket, felt cool against her skin. A familiar weight, a symbol of her unwavering purpose. She took a deep, steadying breath, letting the fear wash over her, acknowledging its presence, then pushing it away, replacing it with a cold, righteous anger. She would stand for her patients, for her principles. She would step into the fire. Another message from Niccolo, just as she was about to leave the break room, a final anchoring thought. Daylight and documentation. Beatrice, remember your purpose. It wasn't a warning, but a reaffirmation. He trusted her to see this through, her way, and for the first time in years, she felt utterly, terrifyingly ready. The stage was set. The hospital hummed, a familiar, comforting drone, until a sudden guttural groan ripped through the building. The lights flickered a frantic pulse, then plunged entire sections into an eerie, suffocating darkness. Only the emergency lights, a sickly yellow glow, remained. This wasn't an accident. This was the final act, Councilman Hayes's desperate, calculated move. Beatrice didn't flinch. Her heart hammered. But her mind was crystal clear. This was the moment. "Code Black, generator failure, everyone stay calm," she yelled, her voice cutting through the sudden cries and shouts. She grabbed the rolling crash cart, already steering it toward the nearest patient, an elderly woman hooked to a ventilator. "Nurse Miller, manual pump. Dr. Chen, secure the crash cart meds." She moved through the dim corridors, a beacon of calm in the manufactured chaos. The generator, a symbol of stability, now faltered, plunging them into shadow. It was a cruel irony, a perfect visual for the corruption she was about to expose. She pushed the crash cart, using it as a shield, guiding patients and staff away from the worst-hit areas, her medical acumen her compass. Her eyes, however, weren't just on the patients. They were scanning, searching. Robert Sterling. He would be here. He had to be. She spotted him near the main security hub, his face a mask of feigned concern, barking orders into a walkie-talkie that seemed a little too practiced. He was directing staff away from the critical evidence, away from the generator panel. She felt a surge of cold fury. He was still playing his part, even now. Beatrice veered sharply, abandoning the immediate patient flow to her capable colleagues. Her destination was the cramped control room, just off the main hallway, tucked beside the thrumming, now struggling hospital generator panel. Sterling was heading there too, a quick, furtive glance confirming her suspicion. He thought he was alone, moving to cover his tracks. She burst through the door just as he was about to swipe his keycard, his hand frozen mid-air. He spun, his eyes wide with shock, then narrowed with a flicker of recognition, and finally a chilling, calculating menace. "Nurse Knight, what are you doing here? This area is restricted." His voice was tight, betraying the surprise. "I'm here to stop you, Mr. Sterling," Beatrice said, her voice steady, stronger than she felt. She pulled the pill tote from her bag, placing it deliberately on the small console between them. The hidden tracker, now active, was recording every word, every breath. She could almost feel the data transmitting, a silent lifeline to the outside world. She pulled out the thick folder, her meticulously compiled dossier. "Your signature, Mr. Sterling, on every lost medication report, on every malfunctioning security camera log, on every manual override for the generator panel." She slapped it down, the sound echoing in the small room. "You orchestrated the chaos. You enabled haze. You betrayed every patient, every nurse, every person in this hospital." Sterling's face contorted, a mask of righteous indignation cracking to reveal naked fear. "This is insane. You have no idea what you're talking about, nurse. You're making wild accusations." He lunged for the folder, but Beatrice was faster, pulling it back. "I have proof," she countered, her voice unwavering. "Years of it. Meticulous. Undeniable documentation. You were supposed to protect us. Instead, you sold us out." Outside, in the surveillance van parked discreetly down the street, Sarah, the investigative reporter, saw the cue. The hospital generator panel, now visible through the specific window Beatrice had identified, flickered erratically, casting long, dancing shadows. "We're live," Sarah murmured, her fingers flying across the keyboard. The image of the faltering hospital, the dramatic visual of the struggling generator was now broadcasting to the world, and within that small, tense room, the pill tote hummed, capturing the raw, damning truth, ready to expose the rot to the harsh, unforgiving light. Sterling's face contorted, a mask of righteous indignation cracking to reveal naked fear. "This is insane. You have no idea what you're talking about, nurse. You're making wild accusations." He lunged for the folder, but Beatrice was faster, pulling it back, his eyes darting to the small pill tote on the console widened. He recognized it. He saw the tiny, almost invisible light blinking. His smug certainty vanished, replaced by pure terror. "I have proof," Beatrice countered, her voice unwavering. Years of it. Meticulous, undeniable documentation. And the world is listening, Mr. Sterling. That little bag, it's transmitting everything, right now. She watched the color drain from his face, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. He wasn't just caught, he was exposed. "You think it changes anything?" he snarled, a desperate, cornered animal. "Hayes will bury you. He'll bury both of us." "He's not burying anyone," Beatrice retorted, her voice hardening. "He's going down, and you're going down with him." Outside the hospital, Sarah's monitor flickered with the live feed, the struggling generator panel, a chaotic backdrop. The audio, crisp and clear from the pill tote, was now amplifying Sterling's frantic denials, his desperate threats. The comments section exploded. A torrent of outrage. Did he just admit it? "Oh my God, the head of security! This is unbelievable!" The story wasn't just breaking, it was shattering across social media, picked up by national news outlets scrambling to verify the shocking broadcast. Councilman Hayes, watching a delayed feed in his plush office across town, choked on his scotch. His face, usually so composed, paled as he heard Sterling's voice, raw and panicked, echoing through the speakers. He saw Beatrice, fierce and unyielding, holding up her damning evidence. His carefully constructed empire was crumbling, live for all to see. His phone began to ring, a frantic, incessant symphony of impending doom. Back in the small control room, Sterling's composure completely disintegrated. He paced, wild-eyed, running a hand through his thinning hair. "He promised me. He said it was foolproof. He said no one would ever know." The words tumbled out, a flood of incriminating desperation, each syllable caught and broadcast by the tiny tracker. "He needed the numbers for privatization, the losses, the malfunctions. I just followed orders." Beatrice watched him, a grim satisfaction settling over her. Her stomach still churned with adrenaline, but the fear had receded, replaced by a cold, righteous anger. This wasn't a victory dance, it was a reckoning. She felt the silent presence of Niccolo, his crew a protective, unseen perimeter around Sarah and her team, ensuring this moment of truth couldn't be silenced. He had kept his word. No interference, just protection. "Whose orders, Mr. Sterling?" Beatrice pressed, her voice sharp, cutting through his panicked ramblings. "Whose orders were you following? Say his name." Sterling hesitated, his eyes darting to the flickering generator lights, then back to Beatrice, defeated. The weight of irrefutable evidence, of public exposure, crushed him. He slumped against the console, his shoulders shaking. "Hayes!" he choked out, his voice barely a whisper but clear enough for the tiny tracker. "Councilman Hayes, he orchestrated it all. The staged robberies, the power dips, the inventory losses. He had me doing it, for the privatization deal." The confession, raw and undeniable, reverberated through the small room, then out into the world. The live-stream audience collectively gasped. The internet was ablaze. The hospital hummed, not with manufactured chaos, but with the quiet, powerful force of truth being unleashed. Beatrice felt a profound exhalation of breath, a release she hadn't realized she was holding. It was over. The rot was exposed. The aftermath was a whirlwind. The hospital, once a battleground, now buzzed with a different kind of energy, one of shock, relief, and furious activity. The live stream had gone viral, exposing the rotten core of Councilman Hayes' scheme and Robert Sterling's sickening betrayal. The privatization deal, once seemingly inevitable, stalled, then collapsed entirely, suffocated by public outrage. Sterling was immediately suspended, escorted out of the building in handcuffs, his face grim. Hayes, his political career in ruins, was under investigation, his name now synonymous with corruption. Beatrice had done it. She had pulled back the curtain, and the monsters had scattered. But the victory, sweet as it was, left her drained. The adrenaline had crashed, leaving behind a hollow ache. She had walked through fire, exposed herself to unfathomable danger, and faced down a powerful, corrupt system, and she had won. The fear was gone, replaced by a fierce, unyielding sense of her own power. Her agency, once a fragile thing she fought to protect, was now a solid, unshakable core. Niccolo found her on the hospital roof, the cold night air, a stark contrast to the burning intensity within her. She was watching the city lights, the distant hum of traffic, a familiar lullaby. He didn't speak, simply stood beside her, his presence a quiet anchor in the chaos of her mind. "It's over," she said, her voice thin in the wind. "For now," Niccolo replied, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "Hayes will face justice. Sterling too. The hospital will be safer." Beatrice turned to him, her eyes searching his. He had kept every promise. His crew had remained unseen, a silent perimeter. Sarah's broadcast had been clean, focused entirely on the evidence she presented. He had honored her integrity, respected her demands. He had allowed her to be the hero of her own story, even when it put her in danger. "I want you in my life, Niccolo," she said, the words surprising even herself, raw and honest. The admission hung in the air, heavy with unspoken complications. The danger, the darkness, the fundamental clash of their worlds. She saw it all, clear as day, but she also saw the man who had protected her, who had understood her drive for justice, who had stood by her even when her methods were diametrically opposed to his. He turned to face her, his dark eyes intense, unreadable. "Beatrice!" "But on my terms," she cut him off, her voice firm, unwavering. "No interference, ever. My career, my nursing license, my principles, they come first, always. Our worlds do not merge, they run parallel. I am not a part of your business, and you are not a part of mine. Not officially, not in a way that compromises who I am." She took a deep breath, laying out the hard boundaries she needed, the non-negotiables that defined her. "I won't be hidden away. I won't be protected by shadows. If it means losing my own light. I need transparency, Niccolo. You know that." He listened, his expression softening, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. He saw her, truly saw her, not as a target or a pawn, but as an equal, a force to be reckoned with. "I wouldn't have it any other way, Beatrice," he said, his voice a low rumble, filled with an unexpected tenderness. "Your integrity, your fight for the light. That's what drew me to you. To try and dim that, to force you into my shadows, would be to destroy the very thing I admire most." He reached out, his hand gently cupping her cheek, his thumb brushing her skin. The touch was soft, a stark contrast to the dangerous power he wielded. "I accept your terms, every single one." The moment stretched, charged with unspoken understanding, with a fragile, burgeoning hope. This was a different kind of alliance, a personal one, built on mutual respect and sharply defined lines. A few weeks later, Beatrice sat in a crowded conference room, her union flyer now framed on her office wall. She was chairing the hospital's newly formed safety committee, a direct result of the scandal. Her first order of business, a complete overhaul of security protocols, a review of medication inventory, and a transparent system for reporting infrastructure issues. She looked around the room, seeing new faces, new commitment. The hospital was healing. A discreet report landed on her desk the following week. An anonymous donation, a substantial Some had been made to a struggling free clinic in South Philly, earmarking funds for new equipment and a robust community outreach program. Another, even larger sum was designated for the hospital's new safety committee, specifically for training and technology. The donor was listed as Anonymous Community Benefactor. Beatrice smiled, a knowing, private smile. Niccolo, moving in his own way, honoring his own code. His quiet acts of philanthropy, channeled through legitimate avenues, spoke louder than any words. He was choosing to shield innocence, not just from corruption, but by building up the very systems she believed in. He understood. He truly understood. 1 year later, the familiar Philadelphia skyline still loomed, but the air felt different, cleaner somehow. Councilman Hayes, once a titan of civic corruption, was now a footnote in legal reports, awaiting sentencing. Robert Sterling, the disgraced head of security, was serving time, his betrayal a stark warning. The privatization deal was dead, buried under the weight of public outcry and irrefutable evidence. The hospital, Beatrice's hospital, was in the midst of a massive overhaul, a phoenix rising from the ashes of deceit. Beatrice Knight walked its halls with a new kind of authority. She was no longer just a trauma nurse, though her shears still rode comfortably in her scrub pocket. She was a respected leader, chairing the hospital's new, empowered safety committee. Her license, once threatened, was now a badge of honor, a testament to her unyielding principles. She advocated fiercely for transparency, for ethical healthcare, her voice clear and unwavering in board meetings and community forums. The old Union flyer, once a symbol of hope against a tide of cynicism, now hung framed in her office, a vibrant reminder of what collective action could achieve, a quiet celebration of change. She stood on the shuttered Naval Yard pier, the wind whipping strands of hair across her face, the faint scent of salt and city exhaust in the air. The vast expanse of the Delaware River stretched before her, reflecting the scattered lights of the city. Behind her, Niccolo Riva stood, a silent, comforting presence. Their world, their paths, remained distinct, yet they converged here, in these quiet moments on the fringes of the city, they both, in their own ways, protected. "The community center expansion is moving forward," she said, without turning, her voice carrying on the breeze. "With the anonymous donation, they can finally get that new pediatric wing." Niccolo's low hum of approval was the only response. He knew the source of that anonymous donation. He understood her need for daylight, for legitimate channels, even as he moved in the shadows to facilitate them. Their boundaries, set so firmly a year ago, remained. Her career, her principles, her public life, non-negotiable. His world, his methods, remained his own. But in the space between, a powerful, unconventional partnership had blossomed, rooted in mutual respect and an undeniable, enduring attraction. She finally turned, her gaze meeting his. There was no pretense, no masks between them, only the raw, honest understanding of two people who had faced down darkness and found a strange, compelling common ground. His eyes, dark and intense, held hers, a silent current of shared history and unspoken promises. She knew without a doubt that he was still her dangerous protector, but now he was also her staunchest supporter, a silent force allowing her to shine on her own terms. The city lights twinkled in the distance, a million stories unfolding. The challenges remained. The fight against corruption, a never-ending battle in a complex city. But Beatrice had made a difference, a tangible, principled difference. She had stood in the fire, and she had emerged not unscathed, but stronger, more resolute. And in Niccolo, she had found an ally, a partner in justice, whose dark power amplified her light, forging, A bond as unbreakable as it was unconventional. Their future was unwritten, but for now, it felt like hope. If you enjoyed the video, tell us where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel to keep up with our content.